Project Ascension by The Myth and Darthlink22, Chapter 5. Twilight's horn hit up as she cast her spell. Now that the rain has cleared up, this spell should work correctly, she explained. Those two aces left the main behind, and that should really help us track us down. And why wouldn't it have worked last night? Rainbow Dash asked demandingly, still unhappy toward the fact that the rescue was delayed. Just watch, Twilight asserted. Her magic flowed into the few hairs she had placed into a plastic bag. The magic swirled around, and then a bright flash sounded. When it cleared, the bag had become a bright orb of light, floating above the 6 mares, shining brightly. After a moment, it began moving forward at a decent pace. Follow it. If we lose it, I can't cast the spell again, Twilight said in a hurried tone. The ponies obeyed, with Applejack and Pinkie Pie pulling the carriage behind them. The orb wasn't moving too quickly, but it still required them to keep up at a brisk pace. All that water last night would have interfered with the spell. In fact, it's best nothing touches the orb at all. The spell is delicate. A lot could go wrong with it. I still say we should have gone out looking last night, Rainbow Dash shouted to Twilight as he was hovering above the company, but who could not see the frown etched into the Cyan friend's face. Hey, Twi, Applejack called. You sure we're going to need a carriage for this? We don't know what Bloodwing is going to do. Twilight trailed off and looked at the Cyan Pegasus, who looked to see it had just been slapped. We better have a way to carry her if she's really hurt. Applejack just nodded. There was silence. No pony felt like talking.
How far away do you think we are?
Pinkie asked at last. No clue, Twilight admitted. Scootaloo would still probably want to keep as far away from Bloodwing as possible. But he could have relocated in 2 years. Still, if it had been that far away, I doubt Blue and Black would have gotten far in the rain last night. Well, when we find them, I'm going to send them flying into the sun! Rainbow crudely said, pounding her hose together as memories of the 2 ponies came back to her.
Oh, and then we can throw a welcome home party, and then we can throw a happy adoption party, and...
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Twilight said. We still have a long way to go. She looked toward where the orb was headed, and it looks like we're headed into the Everfree Forest. Exhaustion was many factors influencing Scootaloo's body, along with sheer will and desperation. She had no idea how far she had traveled into the Everfree Forest, nor did she have a clue on how far away she was from Canterlot. All that mattered to her was to get there as fast as possible, regardless of her body pleading for rest or food. After what may have been an hour, her stomach let loose a carnivorous growl, and memories of her last meal entered her fragile mind. I guess I'll just have to ignore it for now, she thought to herself as she progressed further into the enigma that was the Everfree Forest. Though her stomach did continue to rumble even louder than it had before, she looked around the forest floor to see if there was anything worthy of scavenging, but failed to notice anything within her sight, which was slowly becoming nothing but mist and haze from the constant tiring fatigue. Her body began to long for some rest, some sleep to ready herself for the journey ahead. No, I'm not going to sleep. I won't! The more she persisted, the harsher the pain in her legs became. Strangely, her wings were not affected by the agony that was coursing through her body. She stared back at the feathery masses on her back, ruffling them softly, wondering to herself if she could use them to hasten her pace. She turned to look forward and reared herself in position. She jumped and galloped around frantically, flapping her wings as hard as she could. Small torrents of air started to form beneath her. She could feel the gusts of wind hitting her face as she went along. She moved around like a young, inexperienced Pegasus filly would on its first flying lesson. She suddenly felt her body being lifted upwards, but her eyes were closed from the wind. By the time she had opened them, she was already soaring high in the sky, the ground lying far beneath her. She could see the forest's trees and the muck on the ground. More importantly, she saw Canterlot in the distance. Her instinct kicked in as she flew toward the city. But not for long. Just moments later she felt herself descending. She desperately tried flapping her wings around in a torrent of feathers, but the ground seemed to come toward her at an increasing speed. She winced as her already sore, aching legs landed on the ground roughly. Tears escaped her eyes as she fought the pain. No matter how unpleasant this was, It was paradise compared to what awaited if Bloodwing caught up to her. Moaning, she picked herself up and kept moving forward. As she moved forward, memories of her last encounter with Rainbow Dash filled her mind. Memories that were as painful as her body was sore.
I don't idolize you, war Rainbow Crash! You're getting me dumb. I can't trust you. You won't protect me. I don't want to see you again. You gave it back to them. I hate you.
Scootaloo was speechless for a moment before she lifted her hoof to her eyes and noticed she was crying tears of regret. Regret for saying those hateful words to her mentor. Even if she did mess up, she wanted to help Scootaloo out in the end. Scootaloo closed her eyes slowly before opening them up again, releasing a stream of tears.
I'm so sorry.
Rainbow Dash felt a sudden sting in her heart as she clutched her hooves to her chest, growing slightly while with the others taking notice. She felt a stream of tears flowing out of her eyes and wondered what this meant. Dash? Applejack asked. Are you okay?
I don't know,
she sighed. Rarity put a foreleg around her.
Look at her back, darling. I'm sure.
Somehow, Rainbow Dash didn't seem assured. Meanwhile, back in the carriage, Spike, Applebloom, and Sweetbelle sat in silence, not wanting the adults to hear them. Only the light emanating from a dying candle, just enough to illuminate their faces.
How much longer do you think we have to wait?
You heard my mom. It could take all day, Spike reminded them.
Ah, shit. We're missing a full day of crocheting here. Yeah, it wouldn't have been the same without Scootaloo anyway,
Sweetie said sadly. There was another silence before Sweetie spoke.
Hey, Spike, what was that my sister read at the library?
In the darkness, Spike's blush was clear. It's nothing.
Sure didn't seem like nothing,
Sweetie said, grinning playfully. Spike played with his tail a bit, looking flustered. It's just... After that whole incident with Rainbow Dash reading to Daring Do, I asked what the big deal was about those books. I said anyone could write one, and Mom told me to prove it. So I wrote a story, and my mom said it was pretty good for my first time, so I kind of just kept writing.
Run.
Applebloom tightened up. That'd be a great key mark. Spike and Sweetie quickly shushed her. Shh! We don't want the others to know we're in here, Spike reminded them.
Sorry,
Applebloom whispered in return.
I'm just real worried for Scootaloo. I mean, why did them ponies take her away in the first place? I asked Applejack about it, but she won't talk none.
Sweetie hung her head low.
I asked Rarity too, but she says we didn't need to know.
Applebloom shook in frustration.
Pony feathers! She's our friend. Of course we're gonna need one. Knows the ponies want with her and what they're going to do with her.
Sweetie and Applebloom looked to Spike, who was looking upwards as he let out a sigh. Well, from what I gathered, they want to do some experiments on Scootaloo. Applebloom was about to shout before Sweetbelle stuffed her hoof in her mouth.
What do you mean, experiment?
Sweetie asked Spike, whose eyes showed deep concern. Spike moaned as he regained consciousness. He sat up, his head feeling like it had been split in two. Groaning, he rose to his hooves. Immediately, there was a sharp sting in his back, sending him back to the ground. A swift kick to the gut silenced him, if only because it knocked the air out of him. Blue was his assailant, holding a whip in his mouth, looking at him with the same neutral expression that he always had. Bloodwing, who was right behind him, his face etched with rage. Do you realize what you have cost us? Subject 10 is missing! Again! Black rubbed the back of his head in an attempt to soothe the pain. How long have I been out? Nearly an hour, Bloodwing yelled. Well, that filly could have gone far. Black received another lash, eliciting a groan of agony from the stallion. Don't you remember that the Rainbow Dash was going to ask for custody of her? Bloodwing reminded. You told me so yourself. Those mare, one of whom is the princess's designate, are probably scouring everything right now, looking for her. We can get her back, Black said nervously. You best, Bloodwing growled. The subject is not expendable. You, however, ah, Black Gold. Now then, Catalog Castle could be seen from here. In all likelihood, you will head in that direction. At any rate, I say it's time we moved our operations back to the homeland with how powerful Subject 10 has become. I'll fly on ahead and tell the boys to get everything ready. You search the forest and bring the subject back. By now noon had rolled in, and the bearers were having a harder and harder time to fight the allure of sleep. Applejack and Rainbow Dash, used to extraneous work, were still fine, but the others were beginning to show signs of fatigue. I think we need to take a break for at least 20 minutes, Applejack suggested, but was met with a rebuttal from Rainbow. We can't stop now! We've got a long way to go, and I don't need no rest, Rainbow! But the others do. Applejack retorted to her friend as he pointed her hoof to the others, who were panting and sweating profoundly as their legs gave in to pressure, causing them to fall on their stomachs. Rainbow let out a sigh and decided to rest up high in a tree, but she could not get her eyes to close. My book! Rarity yelled out as she rolled on the floor, dramatizing her supposed anguish to the other. Her friends, however, who had been pulling a very heavy carriage through the unforgiving wasteland that is Everfree, didn't seem bothered at all. Twilight simply face-hugged and shook her head disbelief. Well, maybe if you didn't overpack your saddlebags, Rarity, she told her friend, but still continued to groan as he lay on the ground. The lavender unicorn lit up her horn again, causing the order to stop. Still, maybe we should stop for lunch. What? Come on! Piggy's stomach made a large growl as he smiled sheepishly. How about we have some cupcakes too? I picked some on the carriage, she suggested to the others, who agreed with smiles. Twilight made her way to the carriage's door. Excellent idea, Pinkie Pie, she said to her friend as she opened the door and looked inside for any signs of cupcakes. She saw a basket with cupcakes and lifted it up, but she swore she saw a flash of green and purple where the basket stood, but she looked down again and saw nothing there. Twilight shrugged it off and closed the carriage's door as she made her way back to the others. Inside the carriage, Spike, Sweetie, and Applebloom came out of their hiding places and let out a long sigh. That was too close for comfort, Spike whispered as he slumped on his back against the chairs of the carriage. You can slide that again, partner, Applebloom muttered to herself as he was looking at the door for any sign of movement. Sweetie tried to look out the window, but was pulled back by Spike and landed in his arms. Spike and Sweetie blushed slightly as they let go of each other. If you excuse this live reader. That's so cute. But Sweetie was still upset with Spike. Why did you pull me like that, Spike? She whispered to him in agitation. But Spike's arms were crossed and his foot was tapping. You were trying to get us cut, Sweetie? He asked her sarcastically. No, I just wanted to see where we are. She defended herself weakly. Back outside, the adults ate their meal, along with 8 sandwiches packed by Applejack. Rainbow Dash had already gone down her portion within a minute, and was currently flying back and forth above the camp, waiting for her comrades to finish. Easy there, Dash. You ain't gonna be no help to school if you wear yourself out. Fine! When are you slowpokes going to be ready? Rainbow Dash, ready! Rarity scoffed, but she calmed herself. If it was Sweetie, she'd probably do the same. It's only 10 minutes. Rainbow Dash rolled her eyes. 10 minutes in the Everfree. You know what's running around in here. Most of the dangerous characters in the Everfree are nocturnal, First I explained. The only really dangerous ones still awake are... Then, a piercing howl ripped through the air. Every pony's eyes widened. Timberwolves, Fireside said timidly. A snarl confirmed what they feared. A timberwolf stepped out from the tree, growling at the mares. 2 more came out on either side of it, looking equally vicious. Of course, they hunt in packs, Twilight moaned, backing up. It's only 3, Applejack declared. We can handle. 4 more crept out, coming forward. Never mind. As the carnivores came forward, Twilight's horn lit up, as the others got in a fighting stance. Get ready, girls. We're going to be in for one wild fight. One timberwolf jumped toward Fluttershy, who was too scared to react and closed her eyes, expecting great pain. Instead, she heard a yelp from the wolf and saw Rainbow Dash hovering before her, fighting position ready. Stand back, Fluttershy. Let me handle him. Two more wolves jumped on the ponies, but one was caught in midair by Twilight's magic, thrown against a tree, and the other was butt carved by Applejack. As soon as they were dealt with, two other wolves thought it best to attack Pinkie, but she was smiling deviously as he pulled out her party cannon and shot compressed confetti at the fanged monsters. The impact of it made them fly across the forest, landing at an unknown distance. The one wolf remaining did not back away, nor attack the mares. Instead, it let out a mighty howl which echoed throughout the forest. When it ended, more growling was heard, and many more wolves appeared before the group, encircling them as they huddled up in fear. Applejack's expression was beyond worried as sweat was pouring from her forehead. "All right, what do we do, y'all?" Firelight let out a small yell.
Panic!
Rainbow simply shook her head and rolled her eyes upwards. "That's your answer for everything!" Rarity was sobbing madly as he clung to Pinkie.
Before our lives and increases, maybe they have some sense of reasoning?
Pinkie's mane hung limply in front of her face as long pink streaks as he held on to Rarity and returned with fear for her overriding her system.
I don't think a party will be enough for them.
Twilight looked into each corner and saw no way out. She was starting to lose her breath as the werewolves came closer with each step. Memories flashed before her eyes. Many of them revolving around Scootaloo. The memories of her son Spike made her shed tears of sorrow as this was the end. Suddenly, a jet of green flame encircled the main six, surprising them in the process. The wolves let out a torrent of fearful howls, and some yelled in anguish as they were set ablaze by the flames. The timber wolves retreated to whence they came, and the fire died down when the last wolf left the scene.
Twilight?
Applejack asked her friend as she was confused at what happened. Twilight shook her head in confusion.
Was it me?
Rainbow scratched her head.
Then who the hey was it?
Me? They looked at the top of the wagon to see Spike standing triumphantly. His bravado disappeared when Twilight saw him in angry glare. In a flash of magic, the dragon was in front of him, shrinking from his mother. "Spike," she said slowly, in a tone that he had not heard her use since the Aloysius incident. "I told you to stay at home." I know," he said guiltily. "I just wanted to help get Scootaloo back." Twilight sighed. "Where did you get all this stubbornness from?" "From you, Mom. From you." After a pause, Twilight smiled, despite herself, giggling a bit. "Well, I'm torn. I really should be tending your hide for disobeying me. But you did save our lives." She approached Spike and held him close, nuzzling him affectionately as he hugged his mother in return. "Wait a minute," Applejack said, realizing he was hitting her. It hit Rarity as well. The two went to the back of the carriage and opened it up, entering inside. Seconds later, the cow pony emerged, dragging Applebloom by her tail, and Rarity holding Sweetbelle by the ear with magic, both fairly screaming in protest. "Now you all both hush!" Applejack scolded. "You're in enough trouble." Rarity sighed.
I recommend holding off on it. Now that they're here, what they may have to go through may be punishment enough.
Applejack sighed. "I know." She hugged her little sister close.
"Why couldn't you all stay safe?" "Scootaloo's our friend," the filly yelled. "I ain't gonna leave her behind."
The cow pony placed a hoof on her head. "You."
We should probably get going,"
Firesight said nervously.
"Timberwolves don't like to give up on a meal."
"Good idea," Twilight said. "Kids, get back in the carriage. We'll discuss this later."
"Did you pack any pepper for the food, Applejack?"
Firesight asked. The cow pony nodded.
"We get it out and spread it around. That will interfere with their sense of smell."
"Yeah, got it." Applejack nodded. As he exited the area they were in, Applejack used the grounded peppers to leave behind a trail to confuse any would-be pursuers. After a few minutes of walking, Twilight let out a sigh and smile slowly creeping to her face. Applejack looked curiously at this. "Something wrong, Sugar Cube?" Twilight simply shook her head and smiled. "He's just like me when I'm determined to do something," she said to Applejack as she walked toward with the locator spell still active. "Spike?" Twilight nodded her head, but Applejack noticed a tear escaping her eye as it traveled to her smile.
"She's growing up so fast,"
she said to herself as she fought tears back. Applejack smiled softly and laid her hoof over her friend's shoulder. "Well, do Twi. Even my sis. Important thing is to be there for the little boy." She told her friend with sage-like advice, which was accepted fondly as Twilight smiled contentedly to her friend. although Rainbow overheard this and was starting to think of Scootaloo even more. She always wondered what it was like for Twilight to just one day accept for the fact that Spike wanted to be viewed as her son. She wondered how much Twilight and Spike's life had changed since the last month when they had their moment. Other thoughts entered her mind were those of Scootaloo. She thought of what she would do for her once she got her back. Throw her a party, take her to Cloudsdale, teach her to fly, spend time with her, adopt her. She shook her head violently when that last thought came into her mind. Adopt her. Before yesterday, she had not really given it any thought. But now, since she heard of Scootaloo's orphan status, a part of her mind wanted to take her in as her own. The idea itself was beyond frightening for her, for she was scared of messing things up. So she thought she would make her happy to have her role model take her in. Another part of her felt like Scootaloo was really hers. She really did feel a bond with the little filly she could not explain. As more thoughts came into her head, a sudden sense of regret crept into her mind. She had failed Scootaloo, and not only did she cost her her home, but might well have costed her life thanks to her stupidity. Even as she tried to reason herself on why she did it, she knew there was only one inescapable truth. She failed a helpless, crying filly, a filly she had grown to love. Rainbow? The athletic Pegasus looked to see Twilight giving her a caring look, the kind of look that always leave her feeling weak and mushy. She couldn't stand that look. Yeah? Thinking about Scootaloo again? Rainbow Dash simply lowered her head. We'll get her back. I don't doubt that, Rainbow Dash said. I'm going to make Bloodwing eat his feathers for kidnapping her, but what about afterward? I mean, you know I want to adopt her, but what if I'm no good at being a parent? Twilight just smiled. You're already worried about it. That's a good sign. I know, but Rainbow Dash, you will do fine, Rarity said. I've been meaning to ask, Twilight said. Yesterday, you recognized their ID cards. Or at least, you thought you did. Why is that? The athletic fitness kicked the ground. Well, suddenly, the tracking orb began blinking wildly, twisting and flailing. What's going on? Something's interfering with the spell, Twilight said, panicking. A large surge of magic. Can you fix it? No, but I don't think I have to. If there's something powerful enough to interfere with my magic, it's probably Bloodwing's lab. We better look around. By now, Scootaloo was sure her legs were going to fall off. Her muscles ached and begged for rest, but she pressed forward. She had stopped a few times when she found some berry bushes, and eaten as much as she could, careful to leave no trace of her passing. But she was no woods pony, and she knew it. She must have been leaving a trail of some kind, one that Bloodwing could follow. Thankfully, she was out of the woods. She could see the mountain in the distance. She briefly pondered what to do. Canterlot was only accessible through train and flight, which were the options she didn't have. Sighing, she pushed herself forward, needing to get there, whatever it took. The party came to a halt in front of a building having no earthly business in the forest. Rainbow wasted no time and flew toward the door, ramming it so hard it smashed into splinters, though she groaned as some splinters were found in her hind hooves, causing stinging pain with each step she took. Twilight shook her head and concentrated her magic on Rainbow's hooves, engulfing them in an lavender aura, and the cuts and splinters began to fade away. Rainbow shaked her hind legs slightly, grinning at the healing spell her friend performed. That's cool, she commented to herself, but Twilight stared blankly at her. Rainbow, I know you're desperate, but don't do rash things like that. Think before you act, and I thought I acted with Scootaloo before, and look what happened! She snapped at Twilight, who took a step back as her eyes showed panic. Rainbow took notice, softening her stance, waving her hose at her. I'm sorry, it's just, well... Twilight sympathetically smiled and placed a hoof on her shoulder. It's okay, Rainbow, she told her friend, who landed on her hose before her. Now let's go inside and find Scootaloo. Already way ahead of ya! Twilight's ears perked up as he heard Spike's voice, and saw him standing in the doorway next to Applebloom and Sweetie Belle. She was about to say her part, but failed when they entered the building, leaving the others behind with their jaws dropping slightly, though the three of them were beginning to fume at each of their respectable family member. That little whippersnapper's asking for it! Applejack snapped as he galloped into the building, leaving the others behind. Rarity followed after her.
Sweetie Belle, you know you're not supposed to go to such strange places without me.
Twilight was still furious at Spike, just running into danger like that. A part of her felt like a sense of pride for her son, taking such initiative. She just shook her head and sighed as she turned to her two other friends. Come on, girls, we've got a filly to find.
Okie dokie,
Pinkie replied as she bounced toward the entrance with her infinite happy-go-lucky attitude.
Okay.
Fluttershy said nervously. Scootaloo reached the base of the mountain. She looked up, unsure what to do next. Trying to go through the train tunnels would be suicide. There was no room for her to dodge an oncoming locomotive. She could wait until a train came by and tried to hitch a hide. There you are. She tensed up, spinning around. Black and Blue had finally caught up with her, were galloping up to her, a restraint belt ready. She began to panic. She couldn't go back. She looked back up the mountain. Far above her lay the rocky ridge, her only means of escape. Please let this work, she prayed, spreading her wings and crouching down. She gave a great leap, flapping her wings to gain altitude. She just missed Blue jumping for her. She landed on the ledge, breathing heavily. She looked down to see Earth Ponies glaring at her. Get down here right now, you little bitch! Black yelled. Scootaloo instead looked up at another ledge. With another leap, she was higher up. Now what do? Black asked. We can't climb up after her, and even if we could, grabbing her would cause her to fall. Stay here. If she falls, catch her. I'm going to go back to the nearest town and take the train to Catalot. I can get the others, and we can catch her there if it makes it. Or send men in yellow to get her down here if she doesn't. You have the horn seal? Black nodded, setting the restraint on the ground and pulling out a metallic device meant for Scootaloo's horn. Excellent. I'll send a chariot for you.
That must be the main lab,
Twilight said, looking around the room. Doesn't look like anything's happened here. Spike shrugged. Well, a mad scientist wouldn't have his lab out in the open. He would most likely have it in a secret room, away from the public eye. He spoke these words. The others looked at him as though he had just made the discovery of the year.
What? Is this common knowledge, that's all?
Spike, where did you learn this from? Twilight asked him, as he was looking around the room for any clues. Spike chuckled as he helped his mother looking around the room. Well, I was raised by Celestia's most prized student, who also loves to experiment with spells and potions. He told her bluntly, failing to notice the sheepless blush forming on her face. Rainbow groaned out loud as he was zooming across the room, looking for any signs of entry to another.
Come on! If Daring Do could find her kidnapped niece in Resin City, then I should be able to find my daughter and...
She stopped abruptly and placed her hoof on her mouth, thinking to herself if she really had said that. She noticed the others looking at her curiously, as she just continued looking for any indications. Pinkie Pie bounced around the room, then suddenly stopped and did a hoof stand, waving her hind legs in the air.
Pea-sense tingling!
The others saw this and waited for a response from her as she came back to her other four hoofs.
Feeling!
She pointed to a clean wall in the lab. The others walked toward the lab and began to inspect the wall thoroughly. Applejack stared at the wall blankly before she, too, let out a groan. What in tarnation are we all looking at a wall for, anyway? Apple Bloom, however, walked up to the wall and saw a few cracks in the wall. She placed her hoof and applied pressure, the part where she began to move backwards, and the sounds of the mechanisms moving could be heard, and the wall began to slide open, leaving a trail of dust in the air where the open space stood. Apple Bloom beamed at her sister's astonished face.
Lights! What we're looking for!
Applejack grabbed her sister and ruffled mane before nuzzling her. That's my little sister for you, right there! Apple Bloom giggled slightly, and her sister ruffled her hair, feeling proud for that moment of the others being helped out. Rainbow walked toward the opening. Great job, Apple Bloom! She told the filly, who was now beginning to blush from every word of gratitude she got from the others. Now let's get down there. We gotta fight Scootaloo, and fast! They walked down through the secret passage and began to make a downwards trip to its location. Sweetie heard a faint whisper. She looked around a bit and saw where it came from.
Spike, are you okay?
Huh? He said, jumping a bit. Oh yeah, I'm fine. She knew that he was lying. Twilight performed an illuminating spell that shined so brightly it lit up the entire passageway. It seemed to calm Spike down immensely. The laboratory unicorn looked down at him with a knowing smile, while Spike returned appreciatively. Thanks, Mom.
he whispered to Twilight, who smiled at his words. Sweetie arched an eyebrow, but decided not to push the subject. Why would this guy have a secret room in an already secret lab? Dash couldn't help but wonder. Security, probably, Twilight muttered. At some point he would have stumbled across this place. He kept anything that incriminated him in a secret place. Everything up there was probably just window dressing. The group of ponies came out into a room that branched out into several other rooms. Spread out and search. If you see any pony, backtrack and regroup. The ponies obeyed, spreading out. Rarity, Sweetie Belle, and Dash entered one room to find Scootaloo's cage, with the leg shackles still laying there. Oh dear, Rarity muttered, appalled by the thought of a filly was kept in such conditions. Rainbow Dash was silent. Her eyes were fixed on the shackles that lay before her, and she noticed the blood that was on them. Her face contorted as her rage was building up with every second that passed staring at this abomination that held her Scootaloo. Her hoofs landed with great impact on the shackles, denting them with her hoof marks. Rainbow closed her eyes, before opening them again with a stream of tears cascading from them. She let out a cry as she continued to stomp the shackles, breaking them in the process, but her hooves suffered as bruises began to form. She sniffed as more tears were flowing from her eyes, as she felt a hoof descend over her shoulder. She turned to see Rarity looking solemnly at her, as she shook her head. Rainbow closed her eyes and let out a sigh to calm herself down, if only for that moment. Psst! Hey! Spike's whisper caught their ears. Mom's found something! Follow me! The three mares followed, regrouping with the rest to enter a room that Twilight and Fluttershy had chosen. It looked like the office of a mad pony. Fitting, since it was Bloodwings. There was only a desk and a bed for furniture, but the walls were decorated in old newspaper clippings and hastily scrawled notes. Look! Rainbow Dash gave a gasp. It was her. A photograph of her as a filly, looking like it wasn't long after she earned her cutie mark. What the? The cyan mare shivered. The thought that some pony had been secretly monitoring her for that long. Twilight read the notes. Sonic boom speed estimated at Mach 3. Record breaking. Perfect for Pegasus attributes. Project Genetic Material Sponsor. As he read these notes out loud, her eyes began to dilate in shock at the information written on the paper. Rainbow was becoming very disturbed at this. Applejack placed a hoof on her shoulder as she was becoming worried for her friend's state of mind. Spike was curious at this, but was nudged by Applebloom. Well, isn't Applebloom? Look. Applebloom pointed to a few jars behind Spike. He saw this, and approached the jars, but gasped loudly, backing away from the jars. Twilight heard him and handed the notes to Applejack, who thought it best not to let Rainbow see the notes she was holding now. She made her way to a frightened Spike and held him close as he showed her eyes displaying fear. What is it, Spike? Spike pointed to the jars, and Twilight let out a gasp too, but she went up to the jars to get a closer look. Inside the jars were scales. Dragon scales. More importantly, pink dragon scales. She examined each jar before finding more notes beside him. She took the notes and saw a picture of Spike when he just hatched out of his egg. More interesting, she saw a picture of herself when she just received her cutie mark. She read notes that were written about her there. Magic rating, reading up to 9,000. Breaking record by 5,000. Remarkable response to the entrance exam. Perfect for unicorn attributes. Project Genetic Material Sponsor. He must have taken these back when he worked at the castle, Spike muttered. What does he mean, remarkable results? Applejack asked. Don't every unicorn at that school hatch a dragon? Not really, Twilight explained. Most are given a fake egg enchanted with a few protection spells. If they manage to hatch it, they get a stuffed toy dragon. But Princess Celestia sensed my strength and gave me a real egg to hatch. But why do they care about Spike when making an alicorn? Pinkie asked. Is Princess Celestia part dragon? Twilight shrugged. Maybe he still has a lot of my magic in him, she guessed. Don't you know that curiosity kills the cat, or in this case the pony? Twilight froze in place as she dropped the notes to the ground, whirling herself to the door's entrance and seeing two Pegasi standing there.
The one who spoke was a mare who had a bright yellow coat and a darkish yellow short mane, her facial expression showing nothing but malice. The other pony, a stallion, had a bright red coat with a spiky maroon mane, who only held a grin on his face. Both of them were carrying what looked like to be arsonist toolkits, indicating that they were here to erase what was discovered, or what could be discovered. The others came into a defensive position. The other three members stood behind their guardians.
Now this is a surprise. 2 out of 3 genetic materials coming here at the same time.
The red one spoke casually as the yellow one laughed hysterically.
You got that right. Wonder if they want the little princess back.
Who are you? Das demanded.
Where's Scootaloo? You mean Subject 10?
The red one asked innocently, the yellow one laughing wickedly beat next to him. I mean
Scootaloo,
the cyan mare said through gritted teeth.
Oh, how cute.
Listen up.
The red one stepped forward.
The name's Red. Got it memorized.
Yellow.
The other said bluntly.
Great.
Applejack muttered, rolling her eyes.
We're going up against the whole rainbow.
Just us. Now I suggest you all move.
Why? Das challenged. There's 6 of us and 2 of you. Easy advantage.
Now, you see, that would be the case if you were facing any ordinary Pegasus for Cloudsdale,
Red said as he and Yellow lowered their arson equipment.
But there's one thing different about the 2 of us.
They got into a fighting stance, spreading their wings. And what's that?
Bloodwing hasn't worked on you.
In a flash, Red's wings were aflame, fire dancing on his feathers. Then, much to their shock, they came off his body, spinning in circles at his side, looking extremely menacing. Yellow's feathers, however, sparked to life. They flew off her wings, each crackling with electricity as they pointed at the bearers. Das called.
That's a pretty good advantage.